Hey everybody, it's Matt Fury here at NAMM 2019 in the Avid booth with my best friend Will Files, re-recording Mixer to the Stars. Well, let's see, Star Trek Into Darkness, Star Wars The Force Awakens, War of the Planet of the Apes, now Venom. Those are some pretty big movies. What is it about Will Files that they keep calling you for those big projects?
I think I'm just a good punching bag. I honestly don't know sometimes. But, I'd like to think it's because I try to understand what the filmmakers are going for, and instead of just putting my sound on things or my mark on things, I always try to figure out what is the director's aesthetic, what kind of film are they trying to make. And a lot of it's just about listening to them and trying to figure out emotionally what they're trying to do with the film.
So we have a lot of people watching these videos from different disciplines in the audio industry. They might not know what a re-recording mixer does. So when you're at that party, or your mother says, oh, my son, he worked on Star Trek Into Darkness as a re-recording mixer, and they all say, what the hell's a re-recording mixer? What do you tell them a re-recording mixer does?
Right, everybody always thinks that all the sound is just recorded on set. But, the reality is you're lucky if you get a clean recording of just the dialogue from the set. So we take all the stuff that gets recorded on the set, all the additional dialogue that gets recorded, the hundreds and hundreds of tracks of sound effects and sound design, the hundreds and hundreds of tracks of music, and all of that has to get filtered into one big funnel, and someone has to decide out of all those hundreds of ingredients what gets featured from moment to moment, and that's our job. And there's lots of ways that we do it. We've got panners, we've got EQs, we've got reverbs and echoes, we've got distortion boxes, we've got all kinds of stuff. We can pan things anywhere around the room, and Atmos and all that, but at the end of the day what it really comes down to is the fader. And where's that fader for each sound from every moment to moment, and trying to pick the moments.
So Will Files Audio Funnel.
That's me.
Awesome. So Venom, really big movie, really cool movie. What was it that was so different about Venom in terms of any sort of unique challenges that might have been different from some of the other big movies that you've done?
Well, the whole movie is sort of chock full of conceptual challenges. There's all these space creatures that are made of goo, and various technologies that don't exist, and all these things that we had to come up with ideas for. Well, how was this thing going to sound? And that was often in tandem with them figuring out how it was going to look. But the biggest challenge of all was to try to figure out the Venom character himself, and not only what he sounded like as he moved and things coming off of him and his powers, but also his voice itself and how that voice was going to sit in his body, and even how it was going to function in terms of when he was inside of the other character. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to how this character works in the film, but it was the most satisfying challenge because you're creating a real character that people connect to emotionally. So Tom Hardy gave us some really amazing voice work to build on, and then we took that and manipulated it and twisted it around in various ways, and came up with something that I think is pretty effective and cool.
When I was watching your presentation, you made a big deal about something called objects. What are objects, and how did that impact your work on Venom?
Objects are the things in a system like Dolby Atmos that allow you to put a sound into an object and fly it anywhere you want in the room. That is in contrast to what we would call the bed, which is the traditional stems that we have, 7.1, that kind of thing. When I put something in an object, I can then put it in any single speaker I want in the whole room. So it's like sort of being able to put a finer point pen on something. And that's kind of the way I approach it in terms of the mix, is I try to think of it in terms of layers. So I'll often put things into objects that I want to be in layers that stand out. I'm almost trying to build a diorama of sound so that I have different depths of sound, and putting something in an object is a nice way for me to be able to have it stick out from the mix, both in a spatial way, but also it just catches your ear a little better because you're separated from the rest of the mix.
So clearly you've been doing this for a little while. I know one of the things you rely upon is the S6. What was with the advent of the S6, what changed about your workflow, or what made you want to jump to that technology?
Yeah, well, I can tell you a very clear case in point for me was when I did Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the S6 wasn't around yet, and when I did War for the Planet of the Apes, it was. So on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, I did all my mixing in Pro Tools up until the final mix, and at that point I had to feed multiple 7.1 predubs into the large format digital console that we were using at the time, and hundreds and hundreds of channels feeding out of Pro Tools and into the console. So it was kind of like a hybrid approach where I had half of my mix was over here and half of my mix was over here. And it worked great, but it was frustrating because it's like I wanted to grab that sound that's over in that machine and I can't just do it. By the time the S6 came around, I was able to say, okay, even though all my sounds are playing off of 3 different Pro Tools systems, I'm able to put them all on one surface together without having to go in and out of different machines to make that happen. So the S6 for me has been a real game changer in that regard, because often on these big films you have more than one Pro Tools system. So you're able to put multiple Pro Tools systems together and make it feel like one big console. And move things around and have, you know, custom fader groups and all that stuff that allows you to work in a very streamlined way, because a lot of what we're doing on the final mix is not just mixing but dealing with notes that are happening very quickly, and you have to be able to navigate around the sessions and around the sounds as quickly as possible so that you don't have Mr. Big Shot Director sitting next to you waiting for you just to find the sound. You know, he says, you know, turn up that punch, and you go, oh God, where is it? You know, that's like embarrassing. So luckily now we're getting so much feedback from the F6. I can see the waveform, I can see the meter, I can even see my automation that I've written, and I can see what I'm doing, and it just makes it so I don't have to have them sitting there waiting for me to figure it out.
Well, clearly the end result is something amazing, and it's great technology, but that technology is nothing without your considerable talents. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for that awesome session. It was great having you here today.
Thanks a lot. Nice to be here.
Well, there you go. So if you want to see more incredible sessions like what Will did, you can download the Avid Link app, and you can actually see these things happening live. So go do that right now. We'll see you again real soon here from Avid 2019 NAMM. Yay!